So hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to talk through today a little bit about Zero Trust and how VMware has been implementing this internally and how we've progressed and are now kind of on our next generation. So this is kind of a bit of lessons learned, hopefully a bit of an insight for all of you into the kinds of things that you could use, hopefully, to start your transformation or maybe accelerate one that you've already got in place. So we have a disclaimer, as with everything. I'm not going to read this at you, but I will leave it on the screen for a few seconds for you to read through. I don't believe I'm talking about any new technology features in here. If I do, though, the usual rules apply. These are, much like you, I have no insight into our product roadmaps or feature development at VMware. We are treated as a customer, VMware IT. So we use our products exactly the same as you do. We just tend to be a bit more bleeding edge, so we tend to deploy the initial release or the newest patch immediately it becomes available. So other than that, nothing on here that really needs calling out. So let's talk about where we're going to go today. So we're going to talk through what is VMware IT. Who are we as an entity? What do we do? What is Zero Trust? Something that's like really buzzwordy in our industry at the moment. Something that, sorry, I think has a lot of hype around it, a lot of marketing hype. So I'm going to talk about it from more of a technology point of view. What do we consider Zero Trust to be from a practitioner point of view? Our 7 steps. So we created a 7-step program to initiate and implement some Zero Trust concepts into our environment. Quick conclusion, and then plenty of time for questions if you want. As Socorro said, if you have any questions while we're going through, please drop them in the Q&A box on Zoom. They'll either get answered online by the team or I'll pick them up at the end. And I love questions, so please, please, please ask questions. So quickly, because I have to do this, who am I? So I'm Craig Savage. I have many certifications, I think, as most InfoSec professionals do. I'm also our Director of Information Security Strategy. So I'm kind of looking at a sort of 3 to 5 year and beyond vision for where we are. So we are now 6 years into our Zero Trust program, which was something I was involved in back at the start. So I can speak about how we envisioned it and how we've delivered upon it. Hopefully you've all seen this slide. This is our any vision, if you like. That's how we tend to refer to it as. And what I would say is this is great as a marketing tool, but it's also great for me as the VMware IT person to articulate this is the complexity of the problem we're solving for. So within VMware, if we start at the bottom, we have all of those clouds. Yeah, we have private clouds internally. We also have legacy on-prem stuff as well. We have hybrid clouds, edge, we do telco stuff, we do public cloud, we've got literally everything. When you look across any application, same thing, right? We're a 20-something-odd-year-old company. We've still got traditional apps, of legacy finance systems, etc. We've got cloud-native stuff, and we've got SaaS. And then along that top row, all of the devices. The only one I can, with any degree of certainty, say I know we don't have is jets. Pretty sure we don't have any managed aircraft in our estate. And I keep checking with our physical security guys to make sure we haven't surprisingly added one. But pretty much everything else, we've got wind turbines at our Palo Alto campus as part of our green energy stuff, thermostats. We have health devices around and managed. So, we have that full range of devices, from traditional desktops through mobiles, through IoT, on all of these. And that's what VMware IT looks after. So we look after this for VMware as the company. And then just to give you an idea of the scale of VMware, because often I find when I speak to customers, you've met with our sales teams. If you're lucky, you've had the chance to work with our professional services or, global education services teams. But you don't often get the feel for how big VMware is because we still kind of behave a bit like that startup. So just to give you some idea, and again, I'm not going to talk through this whole slide. There's a ton of information on here, but I do have a pointer, but it's not working. Apologies. If we look on the top left, we've got around about 26 data centers. I say roundabout because sometimes we make an acquisition and they come with a data center and that number goes up, and then we manage back down. But we generally aim for around 24 around the globe. 7,500 more or less ESXi hosts. So those are our production hosts. These aren't the ESXi servers being used in our various test labs and customer support environments, etc. And then the two that are particularly interesting for the security conversation are the next two across, the two in green, which is, somewhere in the region of 1.6 million VMs created and destroyed a week. That number fluctuates. We hit up to 2 million some weeks, down to 1.5 some, but generally around about 1.6, and 2.2 million containers. That's more than 1 a second. In fact, that's more than 2 a second. Now, if you're trying to do traditional security and you're trying to put all this stuff in a CMDB, well, you'll blow that database up, right? There's just no way you can manage that rate of change. So we had to come up with a better way to do security, a better way to manage this estate without that kind of like old-fashioned kind of command and control mindset. And that's where we started on the zero trust thing before zero trust really became a thing. So we've kind of gone back to rebadge some of this stuff with zero trust because it is. It conforms with the NIST standard, and that's what we use as our benchmark, is NIST 800 for the definition of zero trust and what the controls and what the framework should look like. So the key things I would say, just to kind of cut you on the marketing hype, zero trust is a model that's built on this foundation that you can't trust anything in the organization. Everything needs to start with a base level of 0 and build trust and then maintain trust from that point. And the key point to understand there is our old model was if it was physically attached with an Ethernet connection to the corporate network, it was by default trusted. That's what zero trust is about. It's breaking that default trust. If you've got that, you've got zero trust. And so we kind of treat the zero trust framework as user-centric. So we're looking from, you're right, zero trust is about protecting apps and data. Who accesses the apps and data? Well, that's the users. So if we can protect the users and we can protect the apps and data, we've kind of got both sides of the equation at that point, and you've got half a chance of succeeding in maintaining a secure posture. Service-oriented goes without saying. You can't do zero trust if you don't understand your microservices that are running in your estate. And we are on what we're calling our security as code. And we see zero trust as the foundation of that. So this is to create a highly automated security environment. You need to be able to generate security as code. So that's rather than having to build compliance environments, you want to be able to deploy them from a scripted or automated platform. And that's where zero trust really starts to help. It's going to give you that foundation to build out on. So let's go through the old model. Now, you may have guessed from the accent, I come from England. So these kinds of castles are kind of our thing. So that's why I used the picture of a castle for you. So what do we start with? We start with our outer checkpoint on the castle, right? Our external firewall. Got some guards on the outside gate. This castle's got a particularly, robust security. They've kind of got an inside, before you actually get to the castle, that midpoint. So we'll call that the DMZ. Do you notice I'm doing a Z now, not a Z? Should be DMZ, but there we are. Then we get to the inside gate. This is our main entrance. This is our internal firewall, because that's what lets you into the corporate network, where everything's trusted, right? It's once you're inside the castle, everyone assumes you're meant to be there. Same with the beehive, right? Once you're in the beehive, all the bees assume you're meant to be there. That's how wasps cause problems in beehives. And somewhere in our castle is the treasure vault, or in our corporate terminology, our data center. Yeah, but oops, there's that service tunnel, right? Where the serfs get in to bring the food, or admin back doors into your system, right? That's always been the problem with this. And if you can find one of those back doors, you've cut through all of those security controls you've got, and you're inside the castle. So if we break that down and kind of give a real life analogy, and I'm glad I can start to use this analogy again, now that we're starting to see international travel pick up again. This was very awkward during COVID, as you can imagine. So it's kind of like air travel, right? You turn up at the airport and they want to have a couple of things from you. They want to have your ticket. Are you a ticketed passenger? Do you have authorization to travel on this airplane? And they'll check your passport or identity document. Are you who you say you are? Right, so these are the two fundamentals of zero trust. And you've normally got some form of luggage, which also gets scanned. And that's analogous to your device. Right, so we check your device, we check you, and we check that you should be there. And then with this lets you through the first set of controls, right? This, security control. Then lets you into the boarding lounge, where you can do some basic stuff like, get a coffee, probably connect to the Wi-Fi, but you can't get behind the scenes. You can't go down the service corridors. You can't go, into the back of the shops because you don't have that level of authorization. So again, you're now in a smaller environment where only other air traffic passengers can go, but you can't go to any of the staff areas, even though the staff, analogous to your admins, can get to your areas. And then you go to that last checkpoint for your specific flight, where again, they're going to check your passport, they're going to check you and your ticket. And now this is that kind of, this is like getting into the finance system, right? This is where we're checking, are you in finance? Are you really Craig? And should you be going here? Should I be accessing the finance system at 2 o'clock in the morning? That seems weird when I normally work, Mountain Standard Time, and I normally work during the business day. So that's kind of, if you like, this is you see the analogy to zero trust is you're constantly having your ID checked as you go through the experience. And if you don't match up, you get rejected. Hopefully that helps understand. So this is the VMware Wheel, and you'll see it's based on the zero trust concept. So we've got apps and data in the middle. We've got our technology stack around the outside. All right, so we're considering if we start at the top and we're going to go around clockwise. Got access. So, the airport boarding gate. Are you who you say you are? Should you be getting in? Network. So, which part of the airport should you be getting to? Which parts of the network should you have access to? And then whether that's a cloud or a workload is the decision point in the purple there at the bottom. Should you be going to a cloud platform? Should you be going to a specific workload? And which endpoint are you coming from? And, you see the circles take this round and round because they should all be getting constantly checked. Are you on a legitimate endpoint? Because, if you are coming in from an internet cafe, for example, well, we don't want to be letting you onto our, secure systems. It's that simple. So that controls the access, that controls what network you get into, that controls what cloud or workload you have access to. And then if your endpoint changes, the whole cycle repeats. Key tools that these, what we call pivot points. So that's what the little arrows really are. These are where you pivot from the one, security domain to the other. So Carbon Black's what we tend to use when we're looking at, protecting the workload or cloud and the endpoint transition. Very useful to our InfoSec teams in terms of being able to identify risk, prevent, and obviously detect and respond. NSX and the SASE platforms up at that pivot point between access and network, no surprise, right? That allows us to do the microsegmentation, control the network access, control the network protection. Top left there, workspace 1, again, no surprise. This is how we manage our endpoints, this is how we control access. So again, posture and access. And Cloud Health Secure State, if you haven't heard of this tool as a security professional, you really need to look into it. It's a fantastic tool. We use it extensively for managing our compliance on cloud. And obviously this gives us the ability to securely configure our cloud infrastructure. And then wrapping around this is our visibility and analytics platforms, and of course, our automation and orchestration. This is what we use to build up our kind of zero trust picture with inside VMware. So again, this isn't sales. This is what we're actually doing. And these are the products that we use. So again, hopefully no surprises. We use all of the VMware products, some more than others, but pretty much everything that VMware produces, we use in some form or another within VMware IT. We have a very advantageous licensing agreement, so we use all the products. So let's talk about our 7-step process. So this is what we generated a number of years ago. This is the 7 areas that we decided to concentrate on to get us to what we considered Zero Trust 1.0. And I'll go into these in more detail, so I'll just talk you through what they are now. So core network services, hardened, microsegmented. So this is things like your Active Directory, DHCP, DNS, etc. This is a big one. All manageable endpoints must be managed. So if you're running a Windows or a Mac OS desktop type device, laptop, whatever, we used to have an unmanaged experience to our environment, and we still do in certain scenarios. However, what we decided was, well, actually, if your device can be managed, we really should be managing it. And again, I'll talk about this in more detail. This was an interesting one. When we initially proposed this Wi-Fi by default, Ethernet by exception, a lot of people were like, oh no, people won't like that. They like the reliability and the speed and throughput of Ethernet in the offices. And then COVID happened, and guess what? Everybody went and worked from home over consumer-grade broadband connections, and we absolutely proved that you don't need a gigabit Ethernet connection to do your job properly. So that accelerated this project a great deal. And now if you go to any VMware site, the Ethernet is being deprecated and the preferred route is via Wi-Fi. And one of the reasons for doing that is about getting this model of internet-only access. So we took the model of like, well, if it's secure for our user to work in a Starbucks, why do we need to layer extra security in our office environments if we've already got that security? So let's make the office environment inaccessible to visitors or intruders by removing Ethernet and having secured Wi-Fi, and make the Wi-Fi a kind of better version of an internet cafe. So it's still firewalled, it's still connected, but we treat those user enclaves as a microsegmented pod, if you like, and external to our default trusted network. Role-based access controls and on-demand VPN, another big change with the VPN. You think about it, 10, 15 years ago, it was the goal to have this ubiquitous VPN. The users didn't need to notice, it just worked. And then we realized actually that just gives your endpoints a direct connection to your corporate network, and that's really not a good idea. So now we're moving to how do we create pinpoint tunnels using our Horizon Tunnel product to connect the application directly to its backend without needing that kind of broader network level connection that just causes risk. Something we like to call them blast chambers because we're kind of geeks and it sounds cool. Basically a micro-segmented pod, in our case for R&D and our support teams. And again, I'll go into some more detail. And VDI only for admin level activity. And again, this is another one that COVID helped because we had a lot of our admins saying, oh no, we can't possibly do this all via VDI. I need to use my desktop to do it. And then they had to go and work from home, and surprise, surprise, VDI was more reliable. And so that worked in our favor. So core network services, I really hope most of you have already had this done. This is a foundation for stopping the kind of classic cybercrime, ransomware type stuff, is making sure all of these services are segmented out and inaccessible to the general population. And I'm talking about stuff like DNS, network time, NTP, Active Directory, your building management systems, your Wi-Fi control systems. Make sure all of that stuff is highly segmented so that there is no capability to leverage those platforms to move laterally on your network. And we keep adding to the list of things that we are considering core network services and segmenting out. Radius servers, for example, any of that kind of stuff. And again, no surprise, we use NSX extensively for this. We pretty much, how can we put this? If you're on a corporate network, chances are most of the stuff on there is fairly legacy and doesn't support microservices and doesn't support that kind of micro-based architecture. So that's where NSX really helps from a security point of view, because we can take these old platforms and kind of create that modern security layer around them. And that's what we've been doing. So like I said, we have legacy stuff on the network, mostly finance systems and that kind of thing. Thankfully, we don't have any mainframe. That's where my career started, was in mainframe. And obviously also cloud connections. You need to have a route to do that. That's our internal product on the right there that we use, called CloudGate, which is why it's blurred, because it's not a commercially available offering. And we make sure that when a user tries to spin up a cloud instance, it goes through our gateway, which then makes sure that it goes to the correct billing account, it gets the correct security parameters, the logging gets set up and sent to our SIM platform, etc., etc. So let's talk about this managed devices thing. So we already had multi-factor authentication as mandatory for all things. And what we discovered is, because we can then control the certificate-based authentication on there, we can even further reduce our password reliance. And this is a big driver for us, because passwords really are the bane of modern security. So that's where we started to mandate this managed device methodology within VMware. And this is something we look at is, if you're on a managed device, you've got my full security stack. We've got Carbon Black, you've got Intelligent Hub. We manage and pre-configure apps. So, that old problem of making sure Adobe Reader was updated is gone, because we deploy our managed version, which is correctly patched via Intelligent Hub. And we can make sure the certificates are there. And we can also do push authentication for that kind of step up. So when one of my security analysts accesses our SIM environment, they need to do a step-up authentication, even though we know the device, we know the user, we're kind of double-checking before we allow them in. And you compare that to the unmanaged experience, which, like I said, we do, because there is use cases for unmanaged, but you have network abstraction, so they don't get access to the core network services at all. They have to go through multi-factor authentication, which isn't great in this day and age, where you constantly have to put in a PIN code to get to stuff. So we consider it a functional experience. You can get the job done, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be as easy as the managed experience. And we've seen a lot of traction with this in the organization, because once you've got the bulk of your user estate on a managed device, then you really get that kind of insight, and you can start to understand, what are my usage patterns? What does good look like? And then you can start to manage for the exceptions. And it really plays into our any vision, right? Because now we can safely say we've secured all three of those. Secured the device, we've secured the application, we've secured the cloud. When you think about the endpoint, I always think about there's three things, right? There's the data coming in, there's what's happening on the device, and then there's the data going back out again. So I like to say it's Carbon Black that secures the data coming in. It's stuff like DLP products, information rights management, stuff that control the data going out. And then on the device is where Intelligent Hub and our certificate-based authentication and tokens really controls what's happening. And once you've got all three in place, well, you've got a pretty decent security around your device at that point. Nothing's infallible with the world of 0 days that we live in, but you're in a good place at that point. Office networks, again, the other kind of stealth side effect, if you like, of disabling the Ethernet in our offices is we don't need to buy the Ethernet dongles for our modern laptops anymore. Most modern laptops don't even come with an Ethernet port, so you have to buy this dongle. So there's that kind of, I guess if we take the Apple model, we could call that a green, where we don't provide extra stuff with laptops. So there's that. And it removed a huge admin overhead that we had in terms of network access control for trying to manage access to these Ethernet ports, because they just turned off. And any Ethernet ports that are turned on are directly connected to a specific network segment. So for example, there will be some Ethernet connections available in meeting rooms, but they're an internet only connection. And that is purely for, a visitor that for whatever reason can't attach to our guest Wi-Fi. They plug in the Ethernet cable and they can get to Zoom in order to connect to our screens in our meeting rooms. So that's one of the ways we've kind of tied down that old, the classic social engineering penetration tester. Their objective was to get into the office and plug a device into the network and see what they could get to. And we've removed that vector. And I've already alluded to this with the internet only access. The thing I would say here with the Wi-Fi, a lot of places I've been, a lot of places I've worked, the Wi-Fi attaches directly to the network as if it was an Ethernet connection. And again, that's something that we took apart, put a firewall in between, and basically it's a managed internet-like connection on our Wi-Fi now. We have all the tools. If you can work perfectly fine from your home internet connection, then you can work just as well, if not faster, from our corporate grade firewall systems in the office. Spoken a bit about VPNs, right? We had this world where VPNs became ubiquitous. We had the same, our VPN product is always connected, even though it's running split tunnel. And yeah, it's kind of convenient, but that convenience comes with a security cost. And we are now at that technology point where we can technically deliver services and applications without the need for that VPN tunnel. In most cases, we are significantly down this route. I think of our sort of 700 corporate apps, 400 are already available without VPN, and the other 300 are kind of edge cases. So we are at the point where we're turning off the default VPN for our users and making that an on-demand. So only if you need to access a specific thing do you need to fire up a VPN. Everything else is delivered via certificate-based authentication using Workspace ONE. And obviously, with that, you have to bear in mind, we're a company that has people traveling to what we consider high-risk countries. And so we still maintain a full VPN tunnel for security while in those kinds of locations, with considering that there still is that use case for that complete network abstraction. Glass chambers. This was such an enlightening thing to do on our network. We all run scanners, right? We all run tools on our network to look for vulnerabilities. Whichever tool you use, whether it's paid or open source, they're all doing pretty much the same thing. And as soon as you've got a support organization or you've got an R&D organization, they're going to have a need and a use case for standing up older systems or deliberately unpatched systems because they're testing stuff or they're providing a customer support or whatever. And so this allowed us to kind of reduce the risk of those environments just to that single little container in our network, remove that from our overall scans. So we're not constantly explaining, yeah, we know about that host because that host is doing X, Y, Z. That host just exists in its own little enclave. And what we do is we protect the exterior. So we make it nice and hard on the outside, but soft and squishy on the inside, like that tutu-roll thing, so that we don't need to concern ourselves with anything going wrong in the environment because we know it can't get out. And if it all does go horribly wrong, we could just switch it off, reprovision, and start again. So obviously, especially with our like Carbon Black and Last Line and such products, they require malware labs. This is a classic use case for a malware lab. You can test all the malware to your heart's content, and when you're done, we just blow the environment away and we can stand up a fresh one for tomorrow's work. And the last one is VDI access or API access. So again, this is a working practice change, a culture change in privileged user communities, where their expectation is that they will take their device, their MacBook or their Windows device, and they will run the client on that device and attach directly to the infrastructure they're managing. And the problem with that is if any kind of, infiltration happens on their device, any compromise on their device, and you'll find the word eventually, that we've just lost admin level credentials, right? We've lost privilege. And that's exactly what cyber attackers are looking for. They're looking for those kinds of admin devices so that they can do a credential dump, and they've immediately got the ability to move laterally because now they've got elevated privilege. So our answer to that was, well, let's make sure there's no admin level credential on an endpoint by mandating that they can only access via our VDI platform in the Horizon or via API, which is certificate or secrets-based authentication. And again, this has had a big impact on that kind of security posture. The likelihood of that risk has greatly reduced, which makes a lot of people happy, me included. So hopefully you've seen from the 7 steps that our focus is very much on the user. Protecting the apps and data is core, but if you can make it easy for the user to be part of the security solution, then you're winning. Keep it to manageable steps. There's a lot of nuance in those 7 steps. There's a lot of sub-projects, a lot of activities running, but because we've kind of got it in that 7 chunks, we can manage to that. We can keep people on track, keep the momentum. And the other thing I'd say is, if you consider yourself like an ISP and work to be a good ISP, internet service provider, you're going to get happy users, you're going to get a happy outcome, and you're going to get people doing security by default rather than having to layer on the security. And that's what we want for our users. We don't want them to have to do security. We want security to just be part of the stuff that they do and that they don't notice it. And incidentally, most of our customer satisfaction surveys from our colleagues indicate that they don't notice most of our security products anymore. They're just like, wow, you seem to have disabled all this security stuff. And we're like, no, it's all there, it's all running. You just don't notice it anymore. You don't get the hour of a day where your machine suddenly runs really slowly because there's a full disk virus scan going on. Those days are terrible, right? I think we all agree. So we've moved on past that and make life easy for our users, keep them happy. This has been hosted by our VMware on VMware program. You heard from Socorro right at the beginning. These are the resources you can use to engage with us. If you want to find out more about some of the VMware IT use cases, how we do things, obviously we have our traditional, if you like, IT operations teams, talk about how we manage stuff. We've got more people in information security if you want to get into more detail there as well. And our blogs, I try and write a blog a month on some relevant security topic. Hopefully you'll enjoy those. Twitter, obviously our IT report down there as well is externally available. I think that is the latest one, I hope, Socorro. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time today. I would love to answer any questions that you have. I haven't got any